beautiful people, welcome to another episode of your favorite show, Voices with Clan. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I hope you remember to thank God for this beautiful nature, beautiful you, and the world at large. Today we will be talking about something very awesome, very wonderful, and of course, I feel so blessed to have an awesome person on set today. Guys, before I introduce that person to us, I want us to grab our pens, papers, and of course a cup of water to enjoy what he has in store for us. Talk to you right after the break. Welcome back, guys. As you can see, I am so excited. I just cannot explain how excited I am because I am honored. You may not understand, but honestly, believe me when I say I'm honored to introduce to you a man. He is a man of God. I respect people of God a lot. He is a father and a very wonderful husband. Guys, let us welcome Mr. Daniel Odokwia. Hi, Mr. Daniel.
How you doing? Thank you so much for having me today.
It's my pleasure. I should be thanking you because honestly, dropping all the many things you have to do, being a man of God, being an IT guru, being a social worker, being a father, being a husband, to give us this time, it is an honor. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to a great time.
Yeah, of course. So guys, today Mr. Daniel will be talking to us about this topic many people have been wondering about. Each time I call that name, everybody is like, what is that? What are you talking about? Don't worry, he's going to break it down for us today. And that topic I'm talking about is narcissism. So Mr. Daniel, what can you tell us? What is the meaning of narcissism?
Well, narcissism is a disorder. It's a personality disorder that you can look at it both psychologically and relationally and spiritually. If you really want to look at this topic of narcissism, it's one of those things that affects and impacts people on several levels. There are folks who, at a definitional level, it's this self-grandiose sense of your own worth, your own importance, where you're always looking at yourself higher than everyone else. You have this almost obsession with who you are, your needs, and all about what you want and how you want it. And so that's kind of the definitional way of looking at it. If you look at it psychological, there are people who really suffer with it, who really they categorize it as a personality disorder because it really impacts not only you as a person, but the relationships around you. And really there's a spiritual component of narcissism that we can get into today too. But you can look at it from both a mental health standpoint. You can look at it from well, mental health and psychological, as well as a relationship and a spiritual perspective.
Which means this is actually a mental health issue.
It is a mental health issue through the eyes of psychologists and therapists and things like that. But there's also a spiritual lens that you can look at it also through. And so we can talk about both perspectives, really get a holistic view of narcissism. Okay.
So now, come breaking it down. Who is a narcissist?
Well, a narcissist can be anyone that there really isn't a particular prototype of what a narcissist looks like. It could be a man, woman, black, white. It doesn't discriminate based on that. It's really looking at the fact that a narcissist is anyone who basically looks at themselves above everyone else. They're so obsessed with their own self needs. They have this almost like a inflated, grandiose sense of who they are in comparison to everyone else. So it's all about them. It's always about them. And so when you look at people who are narcissists, it's very easy to spot them if you have the right lens to see them through.
The right lens. I like that part. So you're saying a narcissist can be a man or a woman?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a big one for me though, because I thought it was, okay, now let me put it this way. Is it a particular sex that is more vulnerable?
More prone to be narcissistic?
Yeah, let's say more.
That's a good question. I mean, The research shows that it's pretty well balanced in terms of men and women. Now, there are people in positions of power that can be narcissists. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, sometimes men are sometimes in more positions of power than women.
Right.
But a narcissist can be pretty much anyone in your life.
And do they know they are narcissists?
Now
or they are narcissistic?
Now, that's one of the most troubling parts of being a narcissist is that they really don't, typically they don't see anything wrong. They really, it's the people around them that are impacted, that are affected by their narcissistic behavior. And so it's really troubling because a lot of times they think everything's okay. And sometimes they have insight into it. And so with the right support, with the right, techniques, with the right, interventions, you can help a narcissist become a better version of themselves.
So earlier you talked about if you have the right lens to see, you can know who a narcissist is. So how can we identify a narcissist?
Well, a narcissist, typically when you're around them, it's emotionally draining, right? It's what you call, and I'm going to break it down in very layman's terms. We're not going to use a lot of, because the thing about it is if you make it practical, people can really understand it, right? One hallmark of a narcissist, really one of the biggest hallmarks, is that their relationships are always affected negatively. Typically, the people around them can't stand to be around them for a long period of time. And so narcissists have a very toxic relationship. Their relationships aren't healthy. And so if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you feel them pulling on you emotionally. It's always about their needs, their wants, their desires. And so one of the biggest hallmarks of a narcissist is that you never feel fulfilled in a relationship with them. It's always about what they want. And so if you feel that, that's one sign that you can begin to think that I might be in a relationship with someone that's a narcissist.
Okay. So a red flag is you always feel drained.
There's this sort of emotional draining that happens where you always feel emotionally drained when you're around them. You can be around them not longer than a few minutes and you just feel like, man, they're constantly pulling on you, from an emotional, mental perspective. There's always this draining that happens when you're with them. It doesn't have to be very long. You can be with them for a few minutes and you're like, okay, I need a break.
Right.
So that's one way you can notice that you might be in a relationship with narcissists.
Okay. So, Mr. Daniel, talking about narcissists, right? In relationships, like, what do statistics say? Like, when it comes to emotional relationships, are there more male narcissists or more female?
Surprisingly, it's interesting because when you look at narcissism, you have to look at it on a spectrum, right? It's never black or white. There never isn't like an exact set of categories that says you're a narcissist. Yeah. People can be more narcissistic than other people. So it's on a spectrum. And so when you look at it like that, studies have shown like up to a third of the population in the U.S. has narcissistic-like tendencies. It's all about them. It's all about us. It's all about what I need, what I want. And so if you look at the trend of where things are going in this world of it's me and my needs and what I want and
me, myself, and
exactly. And so, it's a pretty pervasive issue and concern. And so if we don't take a hard look at it and figure out ways to support those who are in those kind of relationships, it can only get worse because narcissism breeds narcissism. You can raise people to become more narcissistic when they're around that type of behavior. And so it's a very important thing to consider.
So talking about the spiritual part of it.
Yeah.
How does the church handle narcissists?
Yeah, there's this, with our spiritual lens, we can understand that there's a spirit behind everything, right? There's a spirit behind, certain types of behaviors. And it's interesting to understand the fact that, the Bible says that God hasn't given a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. Yeah. And if you look at narcissism, part of what's driving that behavior is fear. There's a fear to be vulnerable. There's a fear that, I can't trust other people with my emotions. So therefore I need to protect myself always and make it about me. And so there's a spirit of fear that could be playing in when it comes to looking at narcissists. You know, they're afraid of, and so because the fear is the underlying part of what drives their behavior, you necessarily can't notice that. You know, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you don't think they're fearful. You're thinking they're selfish.
And they're strong.
Exactly. They appear to be strong, but if you look at it, there's the fear of, if I give myself emotionally, if I make myself vulnerable to other people, then I have a chance of getting hurt.
Right.
I have a chance of, maybe someone can harm me. And so when you realize that with the spiritual lens, the fear really drives it. The other part of it that you can recognize is that, a narcissist hasn't given themselves fully to the Lord. There's no way you can walk with Christ and be a narcissist, because the reality of it is everything about spirituality and walking with the Lord is a dying to self, a daily dying to self. And so if you are narcissistic, if you are always making it about you can't say that you're a Christian. You see what I'm saying? So that's a spiritual lens that you can also understand it. It's fear-based. You really can't realistically call yourself a believer if it's always about you. Mm. And lastly, when you look at narcissistic behavior, there's the dichotomy that happens between love. We're meant to love one another. And so, narcissistic behavior, it's all about loving themselves. It's all about self-preservation. It's all about, how I can preserve my own needs and my own interests above everyone else's. And that's the complete opposite definition of what love is. Love is kind. Love is, patient. Love is all of these things. And so when you think about it, you're saying there's no way you can be a narcissist and walk in love. Mm-hmm. And if you're not walking in love, how can you call yourself a believer of God? And so when you draw all those lines together, you recognize that narcissism, and spirituality, are two things that butt heads.
Wow. That's big. So, at first, I thought when I heard that word, right, I thought it was about a man and a woman. I thought it ended in love or emotional relationship or romantic relationship. But I'm just learning today that it's everywhere. So you're saying even in our families, even in our day-to-day life, our friends, we have narcissistic relationships there.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it relationally, when it's between a man and a woman, I mean, if we create that context of understanding it, those relationships don't last very long. It's a very toxic relationship, like we talked about earlier. So if you look at it from that perspective, solely, a lot of times when people are in a relationship with a narcissist, they really realize very quickly that I need to and they basically try to change them. Sometimes they think I can change this person. I can, somehow show them how to be less selfish. And a lot of times for narcissists, they have to go through that self-discovery themselves because they will hurt the people around them. They will, and they sometimes don't mean to do it. It's just the nature of that type of disorder is that it's all about me. Therefore, if it's about me, it's at the detriment of everyone else. Now, if you look at it in your families and you look at it, siblings, mothers, fathers, this very pervasive also, even at that level. And so when you're in family with someone who's a narcissist, it's hard because you feel like they're my family. How do I handle it? They're supposed to be family, supposed to be blood. And so recognizing the signs and understanding how to create boundaries, appropriate boundaries, is a healthy way to deal with a narcissist. You can still love them, but you can love them at a distance. You can love them in a way that you can still protect your own family and those around you, because a lot of times narcissists have a wave of destruction in their relationships. You look at their personal relationships, their family relationships, their romantic relationships, their work relationships. There's kind of this wave of destruction. And a lot of times, they're still not pointing fingers at themselves. They think it's all about everyone else who has caused this to them. And so the nature of a narcissist is that it's never their own fault. It's everyone else's fault because I'm so great. I'm so amazing. They just can't see how great I am.
That's right. Do you think, as a pastor, as a man of God, this might be a bit sensitive, but it's just my thought though. Do you think, there are leaders? I'm sorry, I don't want to use this word because we respect our pastors a lot, but please, let me just say, do you think there are pastors who are narcissists? Because the reason I'm asking this is there are situations where some people go to church, to a particular church, and they don't want to leave, even though they are not growing spiritually or anything. They know they are not growing. They know, it's kind of draining because each time Sunday comes, they're like, oh, not again, but they keep going there. Do you think there are some of those leaders who are narcissists?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question and a very honest question. And it's important that we address that because, there's leaders, across the spectrum, whether in ministry, whether in politics, whether in, our corporations. There are leaders that have narcissistic behavior. Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't discriminate. And even in ministry, the thing about that, when you look at it from a ministry standpoint, I think we have to consider, why God is using that leader, even though they have these types of tendencies, right? And a lot of times you say, for us as followers, we can look at leaders and it's easy for us to point out their faults because we see it. It's glaring. We can see this narcissistic kind of tendency where it's always about them. It's always about what they need. And so as a follower, one of the things you can do to deal with that is to really understand your heart, because it's easy for you to get offended when a leader's like that. And then when you're offended, what happens is that now you can't receive from that leader because you're looking at all their faults, and it's hard for you to see how could God put that person in that position of power? Why would God use that kind of person? But when you look at it biblically, God always uses the most broken, the weakest, the most challenging people to do great things.
Especially so.
Absolutely. Exactly.
I am so interested in that, guy. Seriously.
Yeah. And so it's not for us to try to figure out why God chose him to be a leader. It's for us to really check our hearts and understand how to engage with them. And if you're not growing spiritually, God could be calling you to another ministry, and that's okay. But don't let it be because you're offended and you're walking in unforgiveness and there's bitterness and there's resentment there. Don't let it be because of that. Let your heart be pure. Scripture talks about letting your heart be pure before others. And so understanding that, okay, check your heart. Make sure that you deal with any offense, because naturally we're going to offend each other. Everyone. The Bible says that it's without doubt we're going to offend one another. And so understanding how to deal with that, especially from your leader, is important. So once you have a pure heart and you know that you're constantly praying for them and you're constantly asking the Lord to help you, then if you feel like at that point you're still not receiving from them, then really ask the Lord, is it time for me to move on to another ministry? But a lot of times what tends to happen is that people get so offended and so angry and so frustrated that they leave. And that's why they leave. And so the Lord, and the same lesson that God could be trying to teach you in that ministry, you're going to have to learn somewhere else. And so it's like God places certain things in our lives to show us certain things. Maybe the Lord might be showing us to pray, to intercede for someone, to understand the value of doing that. So learn the lesson now and not later is one of the things to consider.
Right. Okay. Still in that light, what is your advice to someone dealing with a narcissist? I mean, now I'm not talking about family because you don't have a choice. If it's your family, it's your family. If it's your boyfriend I'm sorry, I'm talking to boyfriend, to a pastor, but it's real. So if it's your boyfriend or it's your girlfriend or it's just your friend or, someone you don't have to relate to by birth, but that person you are into, in a relationship. What's your advice to that person struggling with a narcissist?
Yeah, well, I would say really first, understand, am I supposed to be in a relationship with this person? Understand that first. Because if you don't get that right, you could spend years with someone and be so hurt emotionally by the time you come out of it that you don't want to have anything to do with anybody else. You're just like, I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of men. I'm tired of women. You know what I'm saying? And so you have to really understand first, am I supposed to be in a relationship with this person? Because if that isn't established, you will be extremely frustrated, and it'll take you out of character. You'll do things you never thought you would do. You'll say things you never thought you would say. You will act in ways you never thought you would act in. And so once you've established that, once you've prayed and you sense that I am supposed to be in a relationship with this person, then it's a matter of asking the Lord for help. Really, you need grace. Because what happens is that, you know, in our weaknesses, we can receive strength. And if you know that this person, just their ways of doing things, their ways of thinking about things, their ways of approaching things is such a selfish, self-centered way, you really need the grace of God to help you. And sometimes when you understand that, you may not be called to them at this stage. They may need to go do their own self-development. God may need to work with them first, and then maybe later on you can come together. But because we're in this, you know, I want it now kind of generation, we don't have the patience to let things, you know, mature, you know, the way they're supposed to. We want to rush into things. Sometimes we can abort the vision of what God is doing because we can't wait for him to finish his work in that person. And so if you don't have the patience, it can really cause a lot of harm to yourself and to the person you're with.
And if you are, okay, take for instance, your kid sister is in this relationship with a narcissist, or your kid brother, and you know it is toxic, it's not right, and all. What would be your candid advice to that person?
I mean, it's interesting because it does touch home, because I've had family members in relationships with narcissists, and it's one of those things where we had to ask, do you feel called to be with this person? You know, are you supposed to be in a relationship with this person? Because they're always talking about how the person does this, how the person says that. And a lot of times when we're bonded to someone emotionally, it's hard to separate ourselves. We can't see clearly. Our eyes are glazed. You know, we're caught up in the story of love.
We make excuses for them.
Exactly. We miss the practical realities of a relationship. I always say marriage is not for boys and girls. Marriage, you gotta put your big boy pants on and your big girl pants on when you get into marriage, because it's not easy. And if you're seeing those tendencies now when you're dating, oh my goodness, it's only going to get worse when you get married. And so be careful of that. If you're seeing those things now, don't think that, oh, I can save them from it. Oh, I can somehow, because of my amazing personality, they're going to get over it. No, it's going to get worse. And now you feel stuck. Now you don't want a divorce. And then you have children, and everything starts to begin to exacerbate on top of each other. And so it could have been just, if you had just taken time to really say, Lord, am I supposed to be in a relationship with this person? And then 2, can you work on them as you're working on me? So asking those honest questions early on and being real with each other. Don't get caught into that flame of, okay, let's just make this love story happen. No, understand the practical realities of being in a healthy relationship. It takes work.
Then you know it's very difficult because they are so smart. They can kneel and cry and beg, and you know those things make us just keep going back. So, but do you think there is any hope for a narcissist to change? I mean, I know spiritually, like you said earlier, but is there any like medication or?
So psychologically, there are some. So if you look at it psychologically, they say, from a personality disorder perspective, they say that once you have that, now this is the world's perspective on it. They feel like, people who have that disorder, in some ways will always have that disorder. Now that's the world's way of understanding it. Now I believe in the transformation and the redemptive work of Christ. I believe that he can take any heart and transform it from the inside out. I believe that, if you allow the Lord to do what he wants to do, anyone can be saved and transformed. You know what I'm saying? And so, yes, I do believe there's hope. It's going to take work. It's going to take getting around the right people. It's going to take, someone being very intentional about understanding that this is an issue for them. They have to be honest with it. They have to look at themselves in the mirror and say that I have this issue. I have this problem. Lord, can you help me? And so, and they have to get around honest people, because typically narcissists can surround themselves with people who are going to inflate that sense of self. You know what I'm saying? So they'll look for people who are just going to feed into that. And so they never get an honest look at themselves. So they have to be surrounded by people who are going to be honest with themselves. They have to be spiritually grounded enough to let the Lord do the work. And they have to be patient to let him do what he's going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. We'll come back to you. Viewers out there, I have been learning. I don't know about you. I hope you've been taking notes. If you haven't been taking notes, come back and watch again. You'll get more. So for right now, I will let us take a sip of water and we will talk to you again after the break.
Voices with Claire.
Welcome back, guys. I hope you had an awesome time here with us in studio today. And I want to thank Mr. Daniel. I want to thank him so much. And right now, we have the usual last question for him. So, Mr. Daniel, as always, we would like to have an advice from you to us on narcissism. Yeah, and whatever the Lord leads you to tell us.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you so much for having me. This has been a privilege and an honor. This is a real topic. It's a issue that we've all dealt with in some way, whether we've been in a relationship with someone with a narcissist, or whether we've seen it in other people. We've all had some level of experience with this. And so I'm glad that we really be honest about the realities of what's happening, right? This narcissistic tendency, you see it play out in romantic relationships and in families. And so the real advice that I can have is that let's start to be honest. Let's have real conversations about this, and let's allow, self-reflection to take place. Typically what happens is that it's easy for us to want to gloss over these real issues, all in the name of keeping peace. And so when we can have honest conversations and be honest with those that are in our lives, then the real work will begin, and you'll see healing, you'll see transformation. But it really begins with truth, and let's get past all of the things that cloud our minds and our perspectives from seeing the reality of what's going on. And ask the Lord, ask the Holy Spirit to give you that perspective, to give you the lens that you need to see, and then the strength to know what to do. If you do those things, you will be able to walk a life of purpose, a greater life of purpose, because you're seeing this in other people and you're understanding how to navigate all of this. Be blessed and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so very much, man of God. We feel so blessed. I feel so blessed already. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
So, viewers, we are done for today, like I said, and we have a lot more of this on our subsequent shows. So if you want to continue watching, please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, hit likes, guys, so this word can go out into the world. Many people need this. So you can reach out to us on Voices with Claire on YouTube, or you send us emails, voiceswithclaire9@gmail.com, or you go to Instagram, Facebook, Voices with Claire. You will see us and you will get more information. So guys, rendezvous next week. Stay blessed, and we love you, but God loves you more. Bye-bye.